Hello, my sleepy heads. It's good to have you back on History for Sleep. What if, as you drifted to sleep tonight, you awoke thousands of years ago beside the slow, whispering waters of the Nile? Would you recognize the rhythms of life there? The scent of bread baking in clay ovens, the hush of temple prayers at dawn, the dreams of workers beneath a sky of endless sand? Tonight, we'll wander that ancient world together, quietly, slowly, to discover what life in ancient Egypt truly felt like. But before you get comfortable and let your mind drift into this ancient world, I'd love it if you could take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if these calm stories of the past bring you peace. Your support truly helps me grow and keep making these calm journey through time just for you. And in the comments, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always so wonderful to see our little community listening together from all corners of the world, quietly sharing these stories across space and time. So, settle in, dim the light, maybe turn on the fan, take a slow breath, and let us step softly into the world of ancient Egypt. Now let's begin. The night over the Nile is never truly silent. It hums with a faint, living pulse. The croak of unseen frogs, the gentle sigh of reeds swaying at the water's edge, and the slow, eternal rhythm of the river itself. Before the first hint of dawn, the air is cool and tender. The stars, pale and scattered, shimmer faintly above the desert. Ancient witnesses to a land that has already lived for thousands of years. Somewhere along the bank, a fisherman stirs from his mat of woven palm fibers. His body moves before his thoughts do, out of instinct, out of rhythm, the same way his father once rose, and his father before him. He steps out into the mist, where the river's breath meets the sand, and his wooden boat waits, tied to a reed post like a patient creature. He doesn't think of time as you and I do. There are no ticking clocks here. There is only the cycle, the sun, the flood, the harvest, and sleep. As the faintest streak of rose light touches the horizon, the Nile begins to shimmer, silver at first, then gold, as if the gods themselves are brushing color back into the world. It is in this soft moment, when darkness loosens its hold and light gently returns, that ancient Egypt awakens. A herdsman calls softly to his cattle, his voice carried by the wind. In the distance, a woman kneels at the river's edge, filling her jars with water, whispering a prayer to Happy, the god of the Nile, to bless this new day with calm floods and kind harvests. The cool air smells faintly of wet clay and growing things. The Nile is not just a river here, it is life itself. It feeds the fields, carries the boats, reflects the stars, and connects villages like a living thread. To the Egyptians, it is divine. To live beside it is to be part of something both ordinary and eternal. As the light grows stronger, the fishermen push off from the shore. Their oars dip into the water with soft, steady rhythm. Splash, silence, splash. Their movement is hypnotic, almost ritualistic. In this land, even labor has grace. On the far side of the river, the first farmers step into their fields, bare feet sinking into dark, fertile soil. They work in near silence, bending, planting, tying reeds, and the sound of their work blends into the soft chorus of morning birds. To the east, the sun finally rises, not in a rush, but with slow majesty. Its rays fall across endless dunes, gilding the edges of temple walls, warming statues carved by hands long gone. Somewhere, a priest lights incense before a shrine to Ra, god of the sun, whispering that he has returned once again from the underworld. The smoke curls upward, slow and spiraling, as if carrying the prayer itself toward the light. For a brief moment, everything stands still: the river, the birds, the wind, the world. And then, life begins to move again. Within the villages, children stir on woven mats. Their mothers grind grain between stones, creating the familiar, dusty music of daily bread. Dogs stretch lazily in the shade, tail flicking, half asleep. The scent of baking dough mingles with the warm sweetness of morning air. This gentle choreography of life is what keeps Egypt breathing. Not the pharaoh's decrees, not the grand temples, but these small, ordinary rituals repeated beneath the same unending sun. The people here understand something we've forgotten. That time is circular, not linear. That every sunrise is a return, not a race. And so they move slowly, not from laziness, but from peace. The fisherman casts his first net. The farmer presses his hand to the soil. The scribe opens his scroll and sharpens his reed pen. The world is awake, and yet still calm. By mid-morning, the light grows heavier. Shadows shorten, and the sound of life deepens. The creak of water wheels, the bray of donkeys, the chatter of traders already crossing the river on small wooden barges. A young boy carries a basket of onions through the village streets, his bare feet tapping softly against the dust. His sister runs after him, laughing, a sound that mingles with the low murmur of temple bells in the distance. At the edge of the village, an old man sits beneath a palm tree, weaving mats from reeds. He hums a slow, tuneless song, something his mother once sang to him when he was a boy. To live in ancient Egypt is to live within sound, soft, endless sound. The murmur of voices, the sigh of wind through papyrus, the rhythmic thud of grinding stones. Each note gentle, repeating, blending until even work becomes a kind of music. And beneath it all, always the river. The Nile moves as if in a dream, constant, reflective, alive. It glides past mud brick homes and small docks, past fields of barley and flax, past the watchful faces of gods carved in stone. Its waters carry fish, boats, offerings, and dreams. It is the pulse of this world, slow and eternal. By the time the sun stands high overhead, the fishermen have returned. They pull their boats onto the shore and gather in the shade to mend their nets. Their laughter is low and kind, their movements practiced and patient. Nearby, a potter turns his wheel with slow, even rhythm, shaping wet clay into a vessel that will carry water, grain, or perhaps the ashes of someone loved. There is no rush. In Egypt, even creation happens gently. The gods themselves are said to have formed the world from the quiet waters of chaos, not in a burst, but in a slow unfurling, like a lotus blooming in morning light. And so, the people imitate the gods. They create slowly. They live slowly. They rest when the sun burns too fiercely. They understand that life, like the river, is strongest when it flows at its own pace. In the afternoon heat, the world softens. Birds quiet. The air grows heavy with stillness. Children nap in the shade while their parents rest from the fields. Somewhere in the distance, the priest begins his noon prayer, a low chant rising from the temple courtyard. He wears linen robes bleached white by the sun, and his voice echoes faintly against the stone columns. His chant is not for show. It is a rhythm older than language, part of the same heartbeat as the Nile, the crops, and the wind. Inside the temple, the air is cool. Sunlight streams through narrow openings, casting slow-moving patterns on the floor. Carvings on the walls seem to shimmer, alive in the half-light. Gods and kings, their forms frozen in gestures of offering and protection. Outside, life waits patiently for the sun to soften again. As evening approaches, the world exhales. The colors shift from gold to amber, from heat to haze. Smoke from cooking fires curls gently above rooftops, and laughter drifts from every corner of the village. Women bake bread in small clay ovens, their faces glowing in the firelight. Men return from the river, baskets full of fish and reeds. Children chase one another between the shadows, their laughter mingling with the low call of evening birds. The day slows to its natural end, not abrupt, but graceful, as though time itself is sighing. At the edge of the river, the same fisherman from dawn sits beside his boat. He looks out across the water, where the reflection of the sunset ripples like a second world. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. For him, the day has come full circle, from stillness to labor, and now back to stillness again. Behind him, the land hums quietly, distant drums from the temple, the faint bleating of goats, the whisper of palm fronds. All of it folds gently into the night, like a lullaby carried on the wind. When darkness finally settles, the stars return, scattered and endless, just as they were before. Torches flicker along the riverbank. A mother hums softly to her child as the crickets begin their song. Somewhere in the distance, a priest marks the last offering of the day, and the Nile, patient, ageless Nile, keeps flowing. It carries the scent of the day's bread, the ash of burned incense, the light of the stars, and the dreams of 1,000 sleepers. To live beside it is to live in rhythm with eternity. To close your eyes here, beneath this sky, is to join a chain of lives stretching back beyond memory. Fishermen, farmers, mothers, scribes, all breathing in time with the river's endless pulse. So sleep now. Let the waters carry you. Let the stars above Egypt's desert sky keep their silent watch. The world will awaken again with the dawn, and the Nile will be waiting, just as it has always been. The sun rises once more over the Nile, soft and golden, spilling across fields of swaying barley and ripening wheat. The air is still cool, though it won't be for long, and the first sounds of the day are simple ones. The bray of a donkey, the scrape of a wooden door, the splash of water poured from a clay jar. This is the Egypt few stories linger on, not the gilded halls of pharaohs or the mysterious temples carved in stone, but the humble rhythm of the people who made that glory possible. Farmers, bakers, potters, brewers, laborers, the heartbeat beneath the monuments. And as the day begins, you can almost feel their quiet endurance. The world here was not made for ease, but it was made for purpose. A man steps barefoot onto the cool earth outside his reed hut. His name doesn't matter, for there were countless like him, thousands who rose with the same sun and bent to the same soil. His hands are calloused, his back curved from years of work, yet there's peace in the simplicity of his world. He begins by thanking the river, a small gesture, a murmured prayer to Happy, the god of the flood. Without the river's gift, there would be no grain, no bread, no life at all. Each year, when the Nile rose and spilled over its banks, it left behind dark silt, a divine blanket of fertility. It was work to channel it, to guide the waters with patience and muscle, but they did it together. The fields were not owned by one man, but tended by many, families bound by labor and the promise of sustenance. Today his task is to cut bundles of barley, his curved sickle flashing in the morning light. Each motion is careful, rhythmic, almost meditative. There's no rush, just the steady hum of existence. His wife and children are nearby, gathering stalks, binding them with woven twine. Life, for them, is work, but also community. The songs they hum keep time, and the laughter of the younger ones softens the weight of the sun. Back in the small village, smoke curls lazily from clay ovens. The smell of baking bread, earthy and warm, begins to drift through the air. The Egyptian word for bread was ta, and it was sacred. Every meal began with it, and most offerings to the gods included it. It connected heaven and hunger. Women knead the dough by hand, their arms glistening with a fine sheen of effort. They crush barley between grinding stones, a slow, back-breaking task that fills the air with a sandy dust. The flour is coarse, often mixed with bits of husk and grit, but it will feed the household. The dough is shaped into small, round loaves, pressed with fingertips, then placed in beehive-shaped ovens made from mud brick. Nearby, great clay jars ferment the other essential of life, beer. Not the golden, frothy kind of today, but a thick, porridge-like brew, sweet, cloudy, sustaining. It was both food and drink, safer than water, and believed to be a gift from the gods themselves. Even children drank it. The process is simple but full of care. Bread loaves are half-baked, crumbled into a jar, and soaked in water to ferment. After several days, the liquid is strained, leaving behind a hearty, yeasty beverage. It was nourishment, the daily drink of laborers, of priests, even of tomb builders. In the words of old Egyptian hymns, bread is from the earth, but beer is from the gods. By midday, the heat becomes heavy, an invisible weight pressing down on the land. The Nile glimmers under a harsh light, and workers rest briefly in the shadows of date palms. Their skin shines with sweat, their breath slows, syncing with the lazy rhythm of the afternoon. It's a simple lunch, bread dipped in oil, a few onions, perhaps a handful of figs if luck is kind. Sometimes fish, dried in the sun. There are no feasts here, only the quiet satisfaction of survival. And yet, they eat with gratitude, for even a humble meal is divine when it sustains life. Children play nearby, chasing one another through the dust. Their laughter mingles with the hum of insects and the soft rippling of water against the reeds. Life, even in its harshest form, has music here, the low, endless pulse of existence by the Nile. When work resumes, the sun is gentler again, inching westward. The fields shimmer, gold and green, and the rhythm of toil resonates like a chant. The Egyptians were masters of patience. Their labor stretched across days, weeks, lifetimes. To plant, to harvest, to grind, to build. All of it required an almost sacred endurance. And beneath this endurance was faith. Every cut of the sickle, every kneaded loaf, every poured jar was an offering to the gods. Theirs was not a world divided between sacred and ordinary. All of it was sacred. The harvest was a prayer. The rising Nile was a promise kept. When sickness struck or the crops failed, they didn't curse their fate. They prayed for balance to return. Life and death were not enemies here, only companions walking the same eternal road. As evening falls, torches flicker in the gathering dusk. Families gather outside their homes, sitting on low stools made of woven reeds. The day's heat ebbs, and the cool breath of night creeps over the land. A mother hums to her child, stroking their hair. Her song is old, a lullaby whispered through generations. Its words speak of Ra's chariot returning to the underworld, of protection through the darkness, of peace until dawn. In the distance, the temple bells sound softly, not for the nobles or priests, but for everyone. A reminder that even the smallest life under the stars is seen by the gods. The villagers glance up at the night sky, where the Milky Way glows faintly, believed to be the celestial Nile, flowing above as it does below. The same rhythm of life unfolds again tomorrow. The same bread will rise. The same beer will bubble. The same hands will labor and rest. But for now, as darkness settles and the torches die out, all that remains is stillness and the river's endless song. In this stillness, you might feel it too. The quiet grace of ordinary lives, the ones history rarely names. The peace of purpose, the warmth of bread, the laughter by the river. These were the true builders of Egypt, not with stone and gold, but with endurance, patience, and faith. And as the moon drifts high over the Nile, lighting the ripples like silver threads, you can almost hear their voices, distant, timeless, carried on the cool night wind. They whisper of a world where work was sacred, rest was peace, and every breath, every grain, was a prayer to life itself. The morning sun returns to the Nile with its golden hand, spilling across the still waters and bathing the world in a quiet, holy glow. The river glitters like molten glass, and mist rises from its surface, ghostly and slow, wrapping the world in a soft veil. Somewhere in the distance, a conch shell sounds, a call to awaken not just the body, but the spirit. For in ancient Egypt, the day did not simply begin with light, it began with reverence. Every dawn was the rebirth of the sun god Ra, who had battled through the darkness of the underworld to rise once more, triumphant. Every human breath, every rustle of papyrus, every ripple of the river was proof that the gods still smiled upon the land. Life here was not random. It was Ma'at, the divine order, the balance that held everything together. To live well was to live in harmony with that order, to respect the gods, the earth, the people, the seasons, and the flow of time itself. And at the center of it all stood the temples, the living heartbeats of the divine world. As the light climbs higher, the stone walls of a grand temple awaken with it. The carvings etched into its surface seem to breathe, rows of gods and goddesses, kings and priests, all shimmering faintly in the dawn light. The temple is not just a building. It is a bridge between heaven and earth, between the gods and the world of dust. Its design reflects the very act of creation. Passing through the gates is like walking through time, from chaos into order. The outer courtyard hums with the sound of life. Workers sweeping the sandstone floor, acolytes carrying incense, priests moving silently like shadows. Each knows their role, each act deliberate. The deeper you go, the quieter it becomes. Sunlight fades, replaced by the flicker of oil lamps and the scent of burning myrrh. The walls close in, heavy with painted stories, tales of gods born from lotus blossoms, of cosmic battles and rivers of stars. At the temple's heart lies the sanctuary, the most sacred place of all. Here, the statue of the god rests, hidden from the world, bathed each morning in ritual purity. A high priest enters, draped in white linen. His steps are measured, his face calm. He carries offerings: bread, milk, flowers, oil. He does not see himself as worshiping the god. He serves as a caretaker, ensuring the divine essence remains strong within the statue. The ritual begins in silence. He opens the shrine doors, revealing the image of the god, small, serene, often carved from gold or stone. In that moment, the human world fades away. Only devotion remains. He washes the image with scented water, dresses it in fine linen, anoints it with oil, and presents food. Then, quietly, he whispers prayers, ancient words, steady as breath. Come forth in peace, great one of light. May your heart be satisfied, your ka renewed, your power restored by the dawn. When the ritual ends, the food offered to the god is later shared among the priests, blessed sustenance drawn from the divine. Even the smallest crumb carries a trace of holiness. Outside, life around the temple stirs again. Villagers arrive at the outer gates with baskets, figs, honey, beer, small idols of clay. Each gift is humble, yet offered with a heart full of faith. A woman kneels, whispering a prayer for her child's health. A farmer bows his head, asking for water in the season of drought. A widow leaves a garland of lotus blossoms, the flower that rises from mud to bloom, symbol of rebirth and hope. To them, the gods were not distant. They were woven into every part of life. There was a god for the river, for the fields, for fertility, for protection, for wisdom, for sleep. Even dreams were seen as messages from the divine. The veil between heaven and earth was thin here, and the Egyptians lived always aware of its nearness. As the sun reaches its zenith, the great city hums with the rhythm of faith. The air smells of incense and warm stone. The streets fill with color, merchants selling small amulets shaped like scarabs, believed to bring renewal and ward off evil. Scribes sit in shaded corners, writing prayers on scraps of papyrus, rolling them into tiny scrolls for those who cannot read but still wish to be heard by the gods. Temples dominate the skyline, not for arrogance, but for alignment. Each is built along celestial lines, carefully placed to mirror the paths of stars and planets. The priests who designed them were astronomers as much as theologians, reading the heavens to know when to plant, when to celebrate, when to mourn. At night, when the sun vanished beneath the horizon, another kind of devotion began. Fires burned low, and hymns rose softly into the starlit air. The people believed that Ra, the sun god, had descended into the underworld to battle the forces of chaos once again. Their prayers were not merely for themselves, but for the safety of the universe. Because if Ra did not triumph by dawn, the world would end. In this belief lay both fear and comfort. The Egyptians did not see death as final, only as a continuation of the cycle. The same way the sun disappeared and returned, the same way the Nile dried and flooded, so too would their souls journey and return again. And so, the temples were not only places of worship for the living, they were gateways for the dead. Priests performed ceremonies to guide the spirits, to weigh their hearts against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart was pure, light with truth, free of deceit, the soul would pass into the field of reeds, a paradise mirroring Egypt itself, eternal and green. If not, it would be devoured by Ammit, the demon with the head of a crocodile, the mane of a lion, and the haunches of a hippopotamus. But even this judgment was not cruel, it was order. The balance had to be maintained. To live in Egypt was to understand that the divine was everywhere, in the flood, the harvest, the stars, the heart's beat, and the final breath. In one quiet corner of Thebes, a young scribe sits at his table, recording temple offerings. His reed pen scratches softly over papyrus. Outside his small window, he can see the temple courtyard glowing with torchlight. He pauses for a moment, resting his hand. He thinks about the endless rhythm of this work, how each day the same words are written, the same rituals performed, the same prayers whispered. And yet, he finds peace in it. To him, eternity is not some distant promise. It's right here, in the repetition of devotion, in the way life and worship mirror one another endlessly. He looks up to the night sky, where Orion glimmers. To the Egyptians, that constellation was Osiris, god of the afterlife, reborn among the stars. And nearby shines Isis, his devoted wife, forever searching for him. To this young scribe, those myths are not faraway stories. They are patterns of truth, echoes of his own small life, reflected in the heavens above. He smiles softly, dips his pen again, and returns to his work. As dusk settles over the temple district, the final rituals of the day begin. The air grows thick with incense. The priests move through shadow and firelight, chanting in low tones. Their words rise and fall like the Nile's tide, steady, ancient, endless. They close the doors to the sanctuary, sealing the god's image in darkness until dawn. The divine, they believe, must also rest, must journey through the night just as humans do. When the gates close, silence blooms again. The stars glitter above like 1,000 oil lamps hung from the firmament. The scent of myrrh lingers long after the fires die. And in that stillness, one can almost feel the breath of eternity, slow, steady, infinite. To the ancient Egyptians, every day was a story of rebirth. Each sunrise was a creation, each sunset a descent into the underworld. Their temples and prayers were not simply acts of religion. They were ways of keeping the world alive, of holding chaos at bay. Even the humblest person, the farmer, the baker, the weaver, played a role in this divine balance. By living with honesty, by honoring family, by respecting the river and the harvest, they sustained Ma'at. Their gods were not jealous overseers. They were companions in the great rhythm of being. And when storms came or the river failed to flood, they did not see punishment. They saw a message, a need to restore the order they cherished. That is why the Egyptians built monuments so vast, temples so perfect, prayers so detailed, not for vanity, but to ensure the universe remained in harmony. As midnight approaches, the temple district lies in perfect silence. The moon hangs low, turning the river silver. The great pylons cast long shadows across the sand. Somewhere in the distance, a crocodile splashes, sacred to Sobuk, the god of strength and protection. And if you listen closely, Beneath the hum of insects and the soft whisper of wind through reeds, you might imagine the faint echo of voices, priests chanting, spirits moving, gods watching. The air itself feels thick with time. It is a peace beyond words, a peace shaped by belief, so deep it became the rhythm of existence. In this world, everything, every sunrise, every grain of sand, every heartbeat, was a conversation between mortal and divine. The Egyptians did not separate faith from life. To live was to worship. To work was to honor creation. To sleep was to drift closer to the gods. And so now, as your own breath slows, and your thoughts soften like the river at dusk, imagine yourself there, standing in the cool temple courtyard beneath a sky of ancient stars. The incense smoke curls upward, blending with the mist of the Nile. You can almost hear the murmur of the priests, the soft rustle of linen, the gentle crackle of oil lamps. Everything feels vast and eternal. The gods are not far away. They are in the sound of the river, in the rhythm of your pulse, in the stillness between each breath. And as your eyes grow heavy, remember, even in the heart of ancient Egypt, beneath all its splendor and mystery, peace was found not in power, but in balance. The same balance that still hums quietly within you. A small echo of Ma'at, the eternal order that once shaped the world and still guides us through the long, calm night. The sun has begun to fall, soft and golden, over the Nile's slow-moving waters. The sky glows in shades of copper and rose, and the air grows still, as though the entire world has paused to exhale. The hum of the marketplace fades, the fields fall silent, and smoke rises lazily from small clay hearths along the riverbanks. It is in this quiet hour, between light and shadow, that the gods are said to walk among men. For the people of ancient Egypt, the divine was never far away. Every grain of sand, every gust of wind, every flicker of flame carried the presence of unseen powers. The gods were not distant rulers sitting on unreachable thrones. They lived here, beside the Nile, woven into the daily rhythm of life. They were in the water that nourished the crops, in the scent of lotus that floated through the evening air, in the eyes of the statues that watched silently from every temple wall. To live in Egypt was to share the world with beings of unimaginable grace and patience, beings who moved like the sun, who slept and awoke just as people did, who demanded reverence but offered protection in return. As twilight deepens, the temples of Egypt begin to glow. The sandstone catches the last of the light, turning gold before surrendering to shadow. Torches are lit, their flames trembling softly in the warm air. From a distance, the temples appear almost alive, breathing through the flicker of firelight, whispering with the rustle of linen robes and the low murmur of prayer. The priests emerge from the inner courts, each one clad in white linen, cleansed in sacred water drawn from the Nile. Their heads are shaved, their feet bare. In their hands, they carry bowls of oil, garlands of lotus, and small vessels of honeyed beer. The scent of incense thickens, frankincense, myrrh, and cinnamon, blending into the cool desert air until it seems to become a cloud of calm itself. Tonight, the ritual of union will be performed, a sacred act that renews the bond between gods and mortals, ensuring that the world remains in balance. The people gather quietly beyond the temple gates, eyes lowered, voices hushed. A mother holds her child close, whispering a prayer for health. A fisherman lays down a small offering of dried fish. An old woman, her hands worn from years of weaving, touches the stone wall as if to draw strength from it. The gods are everywhere, but nowhere more present than here. Within the temple, the high priest approaches the sanctuary, a narrow chamber carved deep into the stone. The air is heavy, cool, and filled with the rhythm of chanting voices. The walls shimmer with painted gods: Ra, the sun; Osiris, lord of the afterlife; Hathor, mother of joy; Thoth, keeper of wisdom; and Isis, the eternal mother. Each figure seems alive, lit by flickering lamps. The priest bows low before the closed shrine that holds the sacred image, the statue of the god itself. He waits in stillness. The chanting softens. Only the crackle of oil lamps remains. Then, slowly, he opens the shrine doors. The statue gleams in the lamplight, carved from gold and inlaid with lapis lazuli, its eyes of crystal catching every reflection. The priest's voice rises softly, speaking the words of awakening. "Rise, O Great One, from your rest. May your light return with the morning. May your heart rejoice in the offerings of your people." He bathes the statue in perfumed water, anoints it with sacred oil, and dresses it in fresh linen. Each movement is deliberate, almost hypnotic. To the Egyptians, this was not mere ritual, it was caretaking. The god, though divine, needed renewal just as the sun did, just as humans did. The priest lays small plates of bread and fruit before the image, pours a cup of sweet beer, and burns incense that curls upward like invisible prayers. Then he closes the shrine again, sealing the divine presence until dawn. Outside, the crowd remains silent. They know the gods have eaten. That balance has been restored for another day. Beyond the temple walls, night descends over Egypt like a dark blue veil. The stars emerge, clear and cold, mirrored in the slow shimmer of the Nile. Fires burn gently in the distance. The homes of farmers, of fishermen, of families gathered together after long hours of toil. For the people, this is the time of sacred sleep, the hour when the veil between the mortal world and the divine grows thin. Inside their mud brick homes, families lie close on reed mats. The air smells faintly of oil and crushed barley. A faint wind slips through the window slits, stirring the woven curtains. A mother hums a soft song, an old hymn once sung to the goddess Hathor, believed to bring peace and gentle dreams. Sleep, little one, for the goddess watches. Her arms are the moonlight, her breath the Nile. dream softly beneath her gaze, and rise with the dawn, renewed. The people believed that dreams were gifts from the gods, messages sent from beyond the waking world. Some dreams carried warnings, others guidance, and some the comfort of the divine presence itself. When one dreamed of floating down the Nile, it was said to be Happy, the god of the river, offering his blessing. When a loved one appeared smiling in sleep, it was a visit from Osiris, showing that death was not the end. Even sleep itself was a sacred act, a return to the cosmic waters, a rehearsal for the journey beyond. In Thebes, the temple of Hathor glows faintly beneath the moon. Inside, priestesses known as the Daughters of Joy perform nightly songs, soft, melodic chants meant to soothe the divine spirit and bring fertility to the land. Their voices echo softly, rising and falling with the rhythm of the sistrum, a delicate bronze rattle that sings like distant rain. They believe that through sound, they can calm both gods and humans, that harmony in music mirrors harmony in the soul. And outside the temple, the villagers can hear faint traces of the melody. It drifts across the fields and through open windows, mixing with the sounds of night, the croak of frogs, the whisper of reeds, the soft splash of a fish breaking the surface of the river. The entire land breathes together, man, God, and nature, in a single, shared rhythm. But not all sleep in peace. In the deeper hours of the night, priests of Thoth, god of wisdom and the moon, remain awake, keeping vigil by lamplight. They record the movements of stars, the phases of the moon, the rise and fall of shadows across the temple walls. To them, the night is not for rest, but revelation. Each star that moves, each constellation that drifts overhead, is a word in the divine language, a sign written by the gods. By reading the sky, they believe they can understand the will of creation itself. One priest pauses to rest his hand, dipping his reed pen into black ink. His parchment glows faintly in the lamplight. He looks out through the open window, where the desert stretches endlessly beneath the stars. Somewhere out there lies the Valley of the Kings, the tombs of pharaohs, resting in eternal silence. Their souls, it is said, travel this very sky, reborn as stars. The priest whispers a prayer for them, then continues his quiet work. In his calm concentration, there is no urgency, only rhythm. The same slow rhythm that carries the Nile, that moves the stars, that fills the lungs of sleeping dreamers below. As the night deepens, the fires along the riverbank begin to die. The last of the fishermen pull their boats ashore. A soft mist gathers over the water, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The gods are said to drift across the sky now, Ra journeying through the underworld in his solar bark, fighting the serpent of chaos, Apophis. His victory each night ensures the dawn will come again. The people, sleeping peacefully in their homes, are unaware that the universe is being reborn above them, yet they trust completely that it will be. This trust is the essence of Egyptian faith. Not loud, not desperate, but calm. A quiet confidence in the order of things. Even when the river floods or the harvest fails, they do not despair. They wait. They adapt. They trust that Ma'at, balance, will return. For it always has. Before dawn, the first light begins to touch the horizon. In the temple of Ra, the priests gather again. The world has turned another cycle. The god has triumphed over darkness. They open the temple doors, letting in the golden breath of morning. The air smells of new life, of sun-warmed stone, of flowers opening, of water and wind. And once again, the statue is revealed, bathed in sunlight. The god is awake. The world is safe. The priests bow low. The people outside fall silent. For a moment, everything, from the highest pylon to the humblest hut, feels perfectly still. Then the sound of the river returns. Birds call out. Workers stir. The city begins to breathe once more. The gods have not left. They are in every sunrise, every grain of sand, every heartbeat. And now, as you rest beneath your own sky, far from that ancient river, you too can feel their calm, the deep, steady peace that carried Egypt through thousands of years. Close your eyes and imagine the glow of the temple torches, the hum of distant hymns, the scent of myrrh in the air. Imagine the slow rhythm of the Nile beneath a blanket of stars. The gods are quiet now, but they are watching, not as rulers, but as guardians of stillness, of sleep, of dreams. And in their ancient language, written not in words, but in time itself, they whisper the same truth that the Egyptians once knew. That life and death, waking and sleep, light and shadow, are not opposites, but reflections of one endless cycle. The same cycle that carries the river, the same rhythm that guides the stars, the same peace that now carries you gently into dreams. The sun has long fallen below the horizon, yet its warmth lingers in the sands and walls of Egypt, a heat that never truly fades. The desert exhales softly, and from the courtyards of quiet homes, the scent of lotus oil drifts into the night. Somewhere, a woman sits before a polished bronze mirror, the flame of a single lamp shimmering across her face. In this reflection, ancient yet timeless, lies the heart of Egyptian beauty, not vanity, but reverence. To the people of the Nile, the body was a temple, and caring for it was an act of worship. When dawn broke over the Nile, men and women alike rose not just to work, but to prepare themselves to be seen by the gods. To bathe, to anoint, to adorn. These were rituals of purity, no less sacred than prayer. The act of cleansing the body symbolized the renewal of the soul. Bathing took place often, sometimes twice or even 3 times a day, in the cool embrace of the river or from jars of water poured over skin by gentle hands. The rich used scented oils mixed with lotus, myrrh, and cinnamon. The poor, though without luxury, still washed faithfully with natron, the mineral salt that both cleansed and blessed. After bathing came anointing, smoothing the body with fragrant oils to protect against the desert air. The Egyptian sun, relentless and golden, demanded care and balance. Skin glistened faintly with the shimmer of palm and castor oil, infused with herbs gathered from the banks of the Nile. And then came color. From small alabaster jars and carved palettes came the pigments of earth and heaven. Malachite green from Sinai, galena black from Nubian mines, red ochre from the cliffs near the Valley of Kings. These weren't merely cosmetics. They were shields of power, believed to protect the wearer's spirit from illness, evil, and envy. A noble woman would trace kohl around her eyes, thick, almond-shaped lines that mirrored the divine eye of Horus. To adorn the eyes was to invoke protection, to call upon light itself. Even laborers, even farmers, sometimes wore faint traces of kohl, for it was said to keep away the glare of the sun and the sickness of flies. The mirror caught these moments, a small disc of polished bronze or copper, gleaming like liquid sunlight. It was not just an object of reflection, but of ritual. To gaze into one's own face was to see a fragment of the divine, to remember that beauty was not flesh alone, but the harmony of inner and outer worlds. Perfume was the breath of the gods themselves. The Egyptians believed scent carried the soul, invisible, mysterious, yet able to fill a space with presence. In temples, priests burned kifi, a sacred blend of honey, wine, raisins, frankincense, myrrh, and herbs, its smoke rising like prayer. In homes, similar mixtures were used to cleanse and comfort, to fill the air with warmth after the day's toil. One ancient recipe speaks of blending lotus blossoms with cinnamon and cardamom in oil, left to infuse beneath the sun for days. When the jar was opened, the scent was said to awaken memory and soothe the restless heart. At festivals, people wore cones of scented wax upon their wigs, slow-melting perfumes that released fragrance through the night. Under the glow of torchlight, the wax softened, letting oils flow gently down the hair and shoulders. The air itself seemed to shimmer. Imagine standing among them, music drifting through the streets, torches flickering against painted walls, the scent of honeyed myrrh and flowers swirling through the crowd. Even in celebration, beauty was quiet, balanced, and reverent. Hair itself was an art form, a language of identity, status, and grace. Children had shaved heads save for a single lock of hair, the side lock of youth, a symbol of purity. Adults wore elaborate braids or clean-shaven scalps covered by wigs woven from human hair, plant fibers, or sheep's wool. For women, wigs were prized possessions, often perfumed and carefully stored in carved wooden boxes. Some were adorned with gold beads, others with lapis lazuli and faience. To dress one's hair was to shape one's destiny, a ritual of calm and patience. Servants or friends worked with small combs and ivory pins, humming softly, their hands moving in rhythm with the crackle of the oil lamp beside them. Men, too, took pride in their grooming. The smooth face and oiled scalp reflected both cleanliness and devotion. Beards were rare, often replaced with false ones for ceremony, symbolic of Osiris, the god of resurrection. In a world where decay and death were constant companions, beauty was defiance. The people of Egypt did not beautify themselves merely to please others, but to remind the gods that they respected the divine image within them. To paint the eyes, to oil the skin, to scent the air, these were acts of faith, each one whispering, "I am alive. I am part of your creation." Even in death, beauty endured. Before burial, the dead were washed, anointed, and perfumed, just as they were in life. The embalmers worked with reverence, preserving not only the body but its dignity. They painted the lips red, lined the eyes with kohl, and placed flowers and amulets between the wrappings. In the afterlife, the deceased would awaken looking radiant, ready to meet the gods in eternal grace. Beauty was, in truth, immortality's companion. Within palaces and mansions, cosmetics were stored in delicate jars of alabaster, ivory, and glazed faience, their lids shaped like lotus petals or falcon heads. On small wooden tables, palettes of ground pigment lay beside tiny brushes made from reeds. A noblewoman's chamber might smell of lavender and cedar, a blend meant to calm the mind and purify the spirit. Servants prepared the mixtures carefully, grinding minerals, straining oils, blending colors into creamy pastes. Every gesture was measured, slow, rhythmic. The sound of pestles against stone created a soft, hypnotic rhythm. When she lifted her brush, there was no hurry. The painting of the eyes was done in silence. A single, fluid motion from the corner of the eye outward, following the line of life. It was said that when the line was drawn perfectly, the soul could see clearly through it, as if the body itself became a mirror for truth. Even the humblest homes had their rituals of beauty. A simple reed comb, a clay jar of natron, a flower tucked behind the ear, these were enough. The women of the fields anointed themselves with oils made from castor seeds or crushed lilies, fragrant reminders of the river's gifts. When they walked at dusk, their skin glowed faintly, catching the last rays of the sun as if kissed by it. For the Egyptians, beauty was not luxury. It was gratitude, the recognition that to exist was to be part of something sacred. The curve of a cheek, the scent of a flower, the shimmer of light upon water, all were expressions of the same divine rhythm. As night deepened, perfumes once used to anoint the living now filled the air of temples. Priests burned incense before the gods, offering fragrance as a bridge between worlds. They believed the gods themselves were drawn by the sweetness of scent, carried upward in smoke to the heavens. The hymn of the perfumer, preserved in faded hieroglyphs, read, "May the breath of the lotus carry you, O soul. May the wind of frankincense lift your dreams to the stars." And somewhere in a quiet chamber, a woman breathes that same scent as she lies upon a linen bed. The fragrance curls around her like a prayer. Her thoughts drift to the river, to the desert, to the gods who watch over her. Soon her breath slows, her eyelids lower. She dreams of lotus blossoms floating on golden water, of laughter and song, of warmth without end. The night grows quieter still. Centuries will pass. The palaces will crumble. The perfumes will fade. But when archaeologists open the sealed tombs of the long-sleeping dead, they will find, still clinging to fragments of linen and wood, the faint trace of fragrance. A whisper across time. A memory of beauty that refused to die. Perhaps that is what the Egyptians understood better than anyone. That beauty is not surface, but continuity. The gentle persistence of grace even in the face of dust. And so, as the desert winds sigh outside the window, and your mind begins to soften toward sleep, let this thought linger like incense in a darkened room. Each breath, each heartbeat, is its own quiet ritual. Each dream, its own offering to eternity. Close your eyes now. Let the perfumes of the past surround you. The oils of lotus, the smoke of myrrh, the warmth of honey and sun. You are in Egypt still, beneath a sky of endless stars, beside the ever-flowing Nile. The gods are silent, the lamps have dimmed, and somewhere, unseen, beauty endures, eternal as sleep itself. The desert night is utterly still. Even the wind has fallen silent, leaving only the sound of distant sand shifting against stone. The moonlight glides over a vast plain of tombs and temples, each one carved with the stories of the dead, names that once carried weight, now resting beneath the stars. To the ancient Egyptians, death was never an end. It was an awakening, a continuation of the long dream of life. Every life, no matter how humble, was a preparation for that final journey, the voyage beyond the horizon, across the western sands, into the eternal embrace of the afterlife. And as the living slept, they often dreamed of that same crossing, the quiet river, the waiting gates, the promise of reunion. When a person died, Egypt itself seemed to hold its breath. From the lowliest peasant to the mightiest pharaoh, the ritual of departure followed the same sacred rhythm. The body was carefully washed, wrapped, and prepared, but what they tended to most was not merely flesh. It was spirit. The Egyptians believed the soul had many parts, the Ka, the Ba, and the Ak, each with its own path to follow. The Ka was the life force, the invisible twin that stayed close to the body, needing food and drink even after death. The Ba was the spirit that could move freely, a bird with a human face that wandered the world by day, returning to its resting place each night. And the Ak, the radiant spirit, was the soul's perfected form, shining among the stars. To preserve the body was to preserve the home of the Ka, to keep the gateway between worlds open. The embalmers worked with quiet devotion in workshops lit by flickering lamps. Their task was sacred, to protect the vessel of eternity. They washed the body in water from the Nile, reciting words of cleansing and peace. Then came the careful removal of what was mortal, organs preserved in jars guarded by the four sons of Horus, each one marked with divine faces. Natron, the holy salt of the desert, was packed around the body, drawing away time itself. Days turned to weeks, and the air filled with the dry sweetness of resins and myrrh. When the process was complete, the skin gleamed with oils, and the body was wrapped in hundreds of layers of linen, each layer bound with prayers whispered in the language of eternity. A scarab amulet was placed upon the heart, carved with the words, "Do not stand as a witness against me." For one day, in the hall of judgment, that heart would be weighed against the feather of truth, Ma'at, and the soul's fate would hang in the balance. The tomb itself was more than a resting place. It was a miniature universe. Every wall, every chamber, was painted with color and purpose. Scenes of daily life covered the limestone. Hunting, feasting, music, and laughter, not for nostalgia, but to ensure these joys continued in the world beyond. To enter such a tomb was to step into a dream frozen in stone. You might see a fisherman casting his net forever into a river of blue pigment, a woman grinding grain in eternal rhythm, a child playing by the lotus ponds of paradise. Everything here existed in harmony, preserved not in memory, but in magic. The Egyptians believed that through the right words, the right images, the right rituals, one could make eternity tangible. To speak a name aloud was to keep it alive. That was why the tombs were covered in inscriptions, not just decoration, but resurrection. Even now, when archaeologists whisper those ancient names in wonder, it is said that somewhere, deep in the afterlife, the souls stir, remembering the sound of their own identity. When the day of burial arrived, the procession began at dawn. The family, friends, and priests moved slowly toward the western desert, the land of the setting sun. The coffin, painted with symbols of protection and lined with gold or simple cloth, depending on one's means, was carried through the streets to the accompaniment of songs and lamentations. Women beat their chests and threw dust upon their hair, not in despair, but devotion, sending the soul forward with emotion and voice. Priests recited hymns from the Book of the Dead, not a single text, but a collection of spells, prayers, and maps to guide the soul safely through the unseen. They spoke to the gates of the underworld. I know your names. I know your paths. I am pure. I am worthy. I come in peace. At the tomb's entrance, the opening of the mouth ceremony took place. A sacred blade, shaped like a fish's tail, was touched to the mouth and eyes of the mummy, symbolically restoring the senses. The deceased could now see, speak, and breathe again in the afterlife. And as the last words faded into the wind, the tomb was sealed. Yet within those walls, life, in another form, was only just beginning. To imagine the Egyptian afterlife is to picture a dream both vast and peaceful. At its center flowed the field of reeds, a mirror of the Nile's fertile lands, where souls reaped grain that never withered and drank from waters that never dried. There was no hunger, no pain, only the rhythm of eternal dawns. The soul would rise with Ra each morning, sailing across the sky in his golden boat. At night, it would descend with him into the underworld, fighting off the serpent of chaos until dawn returned. This endless cycle, day after day, night after night, was not punishment, but purpose. To the Egyptians, eternity was not stillness, it was motion, a divine rhythm that never ceased. But to reach that paradise, one had to pass through the Hall of Judgment. It was said to be vast and silent, its air thick with incense and eternity. At the far end stood Osiris, the god of the dead, crowned with the white crown of Upper Egypt, his skin the color of fertile soil. Before him was the great scale, balanced by Anubis, the jackal-headed guide. The heart of the deceased, believed to be the seat of thought and emotion, was placed upon one side. On the other, the feather of Ma'at, truth, justice, and harmony. If the heart was light, unburdened by lies or cruelty, it would balance perfectly. The soul would be declared pure and welcomed into paradise. If it was heavy with sin, the monstrous Ammit, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, would devour it, ending the spirit forever. This judgment was not meant to terrify, but to remind the living of balance, of kindness, honesty, and humility. The Egyptians did not fear death as much as they feared forgetting how to live well. Inside tombs, the care taken for eternity was astonishing. Even the smallest ones held food offerings, amulets, and trinkets, anything that might bring comfort on the journey. For the wealthy, golden jewelry gleamed in the lamplight. Vessels of perfume lined the walls, and furniture stood ready for the soul's new home. Painted scenes guided the spirit, boats sailing through celestial waters, gods offering hands of welcome, and the goddess nuts stretching across the ceiling, her star-studded body forming the heavens themselves. To lie beneath her painted form was to rest within the universe. But what made the Egyptian vision so enduring was not its splendor, it was its tenderness. Even in the most modest graves, a single flower might be placed beside the head, or a child's small toy laid by the feet. These were gestures of love, proof that remembrance was its own kind of immortality. Families visited the tombs on festival days, bringing bread, beer, and fresh water for the Ka. They would speak to their ancestors, share their joys and sorrows, and ask for blessings. It was said that the dead could hear, could feel, could whisper advice through dreams. So the boundaries between life and death were never harsh. They were gentle, like the horizon at dusk, where sky and sand melt into one. And perhaps, in the quiet hours before dawn, when the desert cools and the stars fade, the ancient Egyptians found a deep, unshakable comfort in that belief. That death was not an ending, but a return, a sailing homeward, guided by gods, guarded by love, and welcomed by the ancestors who came before. Even now, when we look upon their tombs, the golden masks, the painted eyes that seem to follow us across millennia, we are reminded of their faith in beauty, order, and eternity. They built for forever, and somehow they found it. So tonight, as you lie in your own stillness, breathe as they once did. Imagine the cool desert air drifting through the stone corridors of an ancient necropolis. Hear the soft murmur of priests chanting beneath flickering lamps. Smell the faint sweetness of myrrh, still lingering after thousands of years. You are walking beside them now, through the corridors of time, into the quiet dream beyond all dreams. The gods are waiting, not as judges, but as companions. The stars above are the same ones they watched. The same river flows beneath your memory. Close your eyes. The journey continues. Your breath joins the eternal rhythm, in, out, like the Nile itself. And somewhere in the stillness, you understand what they knew all along. That sleep is only another word for eternity. And every dream, another step toward the light. Night falls again on the Nile. The wind is softer now, carrying the scent of lotus and the last warmth of the day's sun off the river. You can almost feel the hush settle over the land. That familiar stillness that the Egyptians once believed was not just night, but a gentle passage to another world. For them, sleep itself was sacred, a rehearsal for eternity. As stars prick the dark blue sky, we drift into a realm where the living and the dead share whispers. In ancient Egypt, death was not an end. It was an awakening, a continuation of life in another form. Every grain of sand, every ripple of the Nile carried this truth, that the body may rest, but the soul sails on. Imagine you are in Thebes, long ago, standing near a quiet tomb carved into the hillside. The workers have finished their final strokes of paint, vivid blues and ochres telling stories of a life once lived. There are no mournful cries here, only reverence. The Egyptians did not fear death as we do. They prepared for it as patiently as they prepared their bread or their gardens. In the candlelight, priests move in rhythm, their voices low and even, chanting words from the Book of the Dead, sacred spells meant to guide the departed through the afterlife's many gates. The air smells of myrrh and incense. You can hear the soft rustle of linen wrappings as the body is made ready for eternity. Death was not chaos, it was ceremony. Every step, every touch of oil, every knot tied in the shroud was part of a grand design, a promise that the journey of the soul would continue toward the field of reeds, a paradise that mirrored life along the Nile, but without hunger, sickness, or pain. Close your eyes for a moment and picture it, a land of endless harvest. The same river that nourished Egypt flows there, but it shines with divine light. Crops grow higher than a man's head, and every breeze smells of grain and fruit. This was the Egyptian paradise, not clouds or golden gates, but the perfect version of home. Farmers would tend their fields forever under a gentle sun. Mothers and fathers would be reunited, and children would never grow ill or fade. The gods themselves might pass by in silence, watching with approval. In their hearts, Egyptians carried this belief like a lullaby. It made death gentler, easier to hold. Each funeral rite was a bridge between two worlds, and every night, as they fell asleep, they rehearsed that crossing. When you think about it, their entire civilization revolved around this harmony between life and death, light and shadow, waking and dreaming. Even their houses, tombs, and temples were designed to reflect eternity's rhythm. The Egyptians believed that every person was made up of two spiritual parts: the Ka, the life force that remained near the body, and the Ba, the personality that could move freely between the worlds. At death, these two separated, but through ritual and remembrance, they could be reunited again. That was why tombs were filled with so much care: food, perfume, jewelry, even games and letters. These weren't just gifts for the dead, they were nourishment for the Ka. As long as offerings continued, the soul would remain alive in the afterlife. Imagine a small family in a village near Memphis. Each year, they visit the tomb of their ancestors. They bring bread, beer, and flowers. They whisper names softly into the stone. To them, this is not mourning, it's conversation. The living keep the dead alive through love and memory. And in that gentle act, you can feel something timeless, the same feeling that lingers when you think of those you've lost. A quiet recognition that memory itself is sacred, that love is the bridge between what was and what will be. To the ancient Egyptians, dreams were not random illusions. They were portals. Each night, the sleeping mind could drift beyond the veil and glimpse eternity. The gods could appear in dreams, offering warnings, comfort, or secrets. Priests trained as dream interpreters kept scrolls that recorded hundreds of visions, dreams of lions or rivers, birds or broken doors, each one carrying meaning. A dream of light meant favor from the gods. A dream of darkness meant caution. They even built temple sleep chambers, quiet sanctuaries where believers would rest upon sacred floors, hoping to receive divine messages as they slept. You can almost imagine it: a priest lying still on cool stone, surrounded by flickering oil lamps, the scent of lotus thick in the air. He closes his eyes, waiting. Outside, the desert sighs. And somewhere between breath and silence, the veil lifts, just enough for the gods to whisper. If life was a sacred cycle, the body was its vessel. The Egyptians mastered the art of preserving that vessel with astonishing precision. To modern eyes, the process of mummification seems eerie, but to them, it was an act of devotion, a gift of peace. The priests who performed it worked in silence. They removed what was mortal, washed the body with sacred oils, filled it with linen and resin, and wrapped it carefully, layer upon layer, each bound with a prayer. Every bandage was a symbol of protection. Every amulet hidden between them held divine magic. And when it was done, the mummy did not represent death, it represented endurance. In their quiet tombs, these preserved figures lay not as corpses, but as promises that the soul would one day awaken again, restored and radiant. Step now into the cool darkness of a tomb. The walls shimmer with color, scenes of music, feasting, sailing, and hunting. The light from your torch dances over figures of gods and families long gone. It feels alive, almost as if time itself holds its breath here. The Egyptians called tombs houses of eternity. They were designed to last forever, more lasting, they believed, than palaces or temples. Within them, life continued in painted form. Servants are shown carrying food, musicians play harps, and children laugh beside lotus ponds. They painted these not to mourn what was lost, but to ensure it would live again. Every detail was a spell of remembrance, every stroke of pigment a prayer that said, "This was real, this mattered, let it be eternal." And then there was judgment, the moment of truth. The Egyptians believed that after death, each soul stood before Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Before him lay a great scale. On one side, the heart of the deceased. On the other, the feather of Maat, goddess of truth and balance. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was free to enter paradise. If it was heavy, weighed down by lies, cruelty, or greed, it was devoured by a monster named Ammit, and the soul ceased to exist. This image, a heart being weighed against a feather, captures the essence of Egyptian morality, a gentle, lasting reminder that peace was not only found in death, but earned through the purity of one's life. To live justly, to love deeply, to honor the gods, that was the truest path to eternity. And as you listen now, perhaps lying beneath your own quiet ceiling, you can feel that idea breathe softly even today, the wish for a light heart and a peaceful rest. In the end, the Nile was their greatest teacher. It taught them that all things flowed, that life and death were not opposites, but currents of the same eternal river. Each year, the Nile would flood, bringing life to the fields, and then recede, leaving behind fertile soil. And so they believed their souls, too, would return again and again in cycles of renewal and peace. When we speak of ancient Egypt, we often think of its monuments, the pyramids, the temples, the golden tombs. But perhaps its truest monument is this belief that even in death there is beauty, even in darkness there is light. And even in endings, there is always another beginning waiting quietly beyond the horizon. And now, as the last embers of the torches fade, we drift gently back to the river's edge. The water glows faintly beneath the moonlight, soft, endless, calm. Somewhere, a reed flute plays. The sound carries over the still air, mingling with the slow lap of waves against stone. You feel the same rhythm the Egyptians once knew, the breath of the river, the heartbeat of time itself. The stars above are the same stars that watched over their dreams. The night is the same night that cradled their prayers. And as your eyes grow heavier, remember, to them, sleep was not an escape. It was a journey, a gentle crossing between this world and the next. So rest now, traveler of time. Let the echoes of the Nile carry you softly through the veil of dreams. The gods watch kindly. The river flows on, and in its eternal whisper, you find what the Egyptians always sought: peace beyond the Nile. Crescent moon.